It was a bright Tuesday morning in the city, and the streets were already buzzing with the usual crowd of people rushing to work, cafes filling up with coffee lovers, and cars honking as they tried to squeeze through the busy downtown traffic. The air carried the faint smell of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, mixed with the exhaust of cars and buses. On the sidewalk, among the rush of business suits and casual commuters, a woman moved briskly, her focus on her phone as she navigated the crowded pavement. She wore a simple professional outfit, nothing flashy, but there was a quiet confidence in her stride that made her stand out without trying. She walked with purpose, her mind occupied with the work she had to do that day, a schedule filled with appointments, meetings, and tasks that needed her attention. Meanwhile, a police officer was patrolling the area, a man who had built a reputation in his precinct for being overly strict, sometimes even aggressive in how he handled situations. His uniform was neat, and he carried himself with a sense of authority that often made people step aside. That morning, he noticed the woman moving quickly along the sidewalk, and something about her caught his attention. Perhaps it was the way she moved or the focus in her eyes as she glanced at her phone, but in his mind it looked suspicious. He started following her at a distance, keeping an eye on her every move. The woman was unaware of him. She continued to walk, her phone in hand, occasionally checking messages and responding to them in short, focused bursts. She was in her own world, thinking about her responsibilities and the tasks ahead. The city seemed alive around her, a mix of sounds, sights, and smells that made it feel vibrant yet overwhelming at times. People brushed past her, some too focused on their own path to notice the details of those around them. She didn't pay much attention to anyone except for what was in front of her. The officer finally decided to step closer, his expression turning stern. He walked quickly up behind her, his shadow stretching across the sidewalk, and when he reached her, he used a tone that was louder than necessary. He asked her to stop, and she turned slightly, surprised by the sudden interruption. The sounds of the city seemed to fade for a moment as the tension between them became noticeable. Passers-by began to glance over, sensing that something unusual was happening. Some paused, others slowed down, their curiosity piqued by the sudden confrontation. The woman kept her tone calm and polite. She asked why she was being stopped, but the officer ignored her question and stepped even closer, his hands moving toward her in a way that made her instinctively pull back. The crowd around them grew slightly, with people murmuring and pointing, some taking out their phones to record the situation. The woman maintained her composure, keeping her voice steady and her posture strong, showing no fear even as the officer's aggression became more apparent. She understood that panicking or reacting impulsively could escalate the situation, so she took a deep breath and prepared to handle it carefully. The officer's misunderstanding escalated quickly. He assumed she was resisting for no reason and reached to grab her. She instinctively blocked his attempt, trying to protect herself while keeping her balance on the crowded sidewalk. People nearby started to watch more closely, some whispering to each other, others recording on their phones, capturing the tense exchange. The air around them felt heavy, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. She tried again to ask him politely what the problem was, but the officer continued without listening, acting as if his authority allowed him to act first and question later. Despite the growing tension, she did not panic. She shifted slightly to put a small distance between them while keeping her hands visible, a gesture meant to show she was not a threat, but was also protecting herself. Her mind raced, thinking about the proper way to handle this without escalating it further. She noticed the curious and concerned faces of people around her, and realized that any sudden movement could make the situation worse. She stayed calm, focused on the officer and on her own safety, thinking several steps ahead in the unfolding scenario. People started to whisper to one another, some expressing concern for her, others critiquing the officer's behavior. A few individuals approached, trying to intervene verbally, asking the officer to calm down, but he seemed too caught up in the moment to listen. The woman's composure contrasted sharply with the officer's aggression, and it was clear to the onlookers that she was confident and in control, even under pressure. She continued to speak in a calm voice, asking again why she was being targeted, hoping to make him understand without creating a bigger scene. The officer, however, misread her calmness as resistance. He tried to grab her again, this time more forcefully, pulling at her shirt in an attempt to restrain her. The crowd gasped and several people began recording. Their phones held high as they captured the incident in real time. The woman's eyes remained steady, showing neither fear nor anger, only determination. She knew that her next move had to be okay. The tension on the sidewalk had reached a peak, and the people around were holding their breath, unsure of what would happen next. The officer, still frowning, had his hand slightly raised, unsure how to respond to the woman in front of him. He had been used to people immediately complying, but here was someone who did not panic, who did not yell, and who maintained a calm presence. The calmness itself made him uneasy. She asked again in a quiet but firm voice why he was targeting her, hoping to get a clear answer without making the situation worse. The officer, however, remained silent for a moment, clearly struggling to process what was happening. The woman, aware of the growing crowd and the recordings on people's phones, decided to remain composed and strategic. She shifted slightly, putting herself at a safer angle while keeping her hands visible. She knew the officer might react unpredictably, and she needed to make sure she stayed in control of her own movements. Passers-by whispered among themselves, some expressing worry, some questioning why a law enforcement officer would act in such a way. The air was thick with tension, but her calm demeanor began to draw subtle attention. People noticed her professionalism and poise, contrasting sharply with the officer's aggressive stance. He reached toward her again, clearly frustrated, thinking that she was resisting without reason. She instinctively raised her arm slightly to protect herself without making sudden movements. The crowd murmured, some stepping back in concern while others stayed closer, their curiosity compelling them to watch. The woman realized that the situation could turn physical at any moment if the officer acted impulsively, and she focused on maintaining her composure. She spoke again, her voice steady and clear, explaining that she was not a threat and wanted to understand why she was being stopped. Her words carried authority, even though her tone remained polite. The officer's eyes narrowed as he tried to assert control, but the woman's calm resistance and professional stance frustrated him. He was used to people reacting with fear or compliance, but she did neither. Her movements were precise and calculated, showing awareness of her surroundings and the situation without provoking further aggression. Some members of the crowd started to film more actively, capturing the confrontation as it unfolded. Others whispered among themselves, noting how unusual it was for someone to handle a tense encounter with such composure. The woman realized that simply asking questions wasn't enough. She needed to make the officer recognize that he was dealing with someone with authority and training. She subtly reached for her bag again, her movements careful to remain non-threatening while preparing to reveal something that would immediately change the dynamic. She was aware that the officer could react unpredictably, so she planned each motion with intention. The crowd continued to watch, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Their attention was drawn not only by the potential conflict, but also by the woman's remarkable composure in the face of aggression. As she prepared to reveal her identification, the officer grew more impatient. His assumptions about the situation clouded his judgment, and he didn't notice the significance of what she was doing. She held her bag in front of her, making sure that her movements were deliberate and controlled. The people nearby leaned in, their curiosity mixed with concern. Some whispered about the officer's behavior, questioning why someone in uniform would act this way toward a civilian, while others speculated on who the woman might be. She remained focused, understanding that the right moment to reveal her authority could resolve the confrontation without further escalation. The woman slowly pulled out her badge from her bag. The crowd's attention intensified as they realized she was preparing to show something official. Her movements were calm, deliberate, and controlled, demonstrating a clear understanding of how to assert authority without aggression. The officer noticed her reaching into her bag and stepped slightly closer, misinterpreting her action as defiance rather than recognition. The tension rose as everyone watched, waiting to see how he would respond and whether the situation would escalate further. She held the badge carefully, making sure it was visible without making any sudden gestures. Her face remained composed, her eyes steady, conveying confidence and control. She spoke in a calm voice, explaining that she was part of a federal agency, hoping the officer would recognize the authority and seriousness of her position. The officer's face changed subtly, a mixture of surprise and realization washing over him. The aggressive stance softened slightly, though he still tried to maintain control. The people nearby reacted, some murmuring in shock, some whispering to each other about the unexpected turn of events. The officer finally stopped reaching toward her, his hands lowering as he processed the badge. He blinked a few times, realizing that the woman was not only professional, but also held authority far beyond what he had initially assumed. The crowd started to sense the shift in power, and the murmurs grew louder, expressing amazement at how she had managed to stay calm under pressure. She did not gloat or assert dominance aggressively. She simply let her identification speak for itself. Her calmness and poise had effectively neutralized the threat of further escalation. As the officer stepped back, she maintained a safe distance, keeping her voice calm but firm. She explained the reason for her presence in the area, making sure he understood that she was conducting official business and that his assumptions had led to unnecessary aggression. The crowd listened intently, some recording every word, some simply observing. Her professionalism and ability to handle the situation without panic drew respect from the onlookers. People began to recognize the contrast between her controlled demeanor and the officer's initial aggression. The officer, now more cautious, asked a few questions, trying to understand the situation while realizing he had made a mistake. The woman answered clearly and politely, maintaining authority without anger. The crowd slowly started to disperse, sensing that the confrontation was winding down. Some people exchanged whispers about what had just happened, commenting on the woman's courage and composure. Others focused on the lesson for the officer, recognizing that assumptions and aggression in public interactions could lead to serious consequences. Despite the intense moment, the woman remained focused on her purpose. She ensured that the officer understood the seriousness of her position, making it clear that respect and professionalism were expected in such encounters. The city around them resumed its usual rhythm, though the immediate area remained charged with the memory of the confrontation. People who had witnessed it began to discuss it with one another, sharing their impressions. The moment the woman revealed her badge, the atmosphere on the sidewalk changed immediately. The officer, who had been tense and aggressive just moments ago, froze in place, his hands dropping slightly as he processed the unexpected revelation. The badge was unmistakable, an official emblem of authority, and the woman held it in a steady, confident manner that left no room for doubt. The people around them gasped softly, whispering to one another as they realized the gravity of what was unfolding. The street, busy and noisy just moments before, seemed to pause as everyone's attention turned fully to the confrontation. The officer blinked several times, his face shifting from surprise to a mix of embarrassment and confusion. He had assumed he was in control, that his uniform alone gave him unquestioned authority over the situation. But now he was confronted with someone whose authority surpassed his expectations. The woman's calm expression and steady posture emphasized that she was prepared and in command, even in a situation where she could easily have been intimidated or taken by surprise. She spoke clearly, her voice quiet but firm, identifying herself and her role. The clarity and confidence in her tone left no room for argument. Passers-by continued to watch, some holding up their phones to record the interaction, others simply frozen in place, curious and astonished. The woman did not wave her badge around dramatically. She simply showed it and allowed its significance to speak for itself. The officer's body language changed, his shoulders relaxing slightly, and he took a step back. The tension that had gripped the sidewalk began to ease, but the situation was far from over. The woman had to continue navigating it carefully to ensure that both her safety and her authority were maintained. She kept her hands visible and her movements deliberate, showing no sign of aggression but also no uncertainty. The officer, now fully aware of the mistake he had made, tried to find words to respond, but they came out hesitant and uneven. He mumbled a few things about procedure and protocol, realizing that his earlier actions had been inappropriate. The woman listened politely, giving him the chance to speak without interrupting, but she maintained her stance, ensuring that the dynamic had shifted firmly in her favor. The crowd noticed the subtle shift and murmured among themselves, impressed by her composure and ability to manage a potentially dangerous encounter. The woman took a careful step toward the officer, her movements controlled and measured. She explained why she was in the area, detailing her official duties in a way that was professional and informative. Her calm tone contrasted sharply with the officer's earlier aggression, highlighting the difference between acting out of assumption and acting with authority based on knowledge and training. The officer's face showed increasing signs of realization, as if he understood the seriousness of his actions and the potential consequences. The crowd's whispers grew louder, sharing their observations and discussing how quickly the power dynamic had changed. People who had previously been concerned for the woman now expressed admiration, noting how she had remained calm, professional, and assertive in the face of aggression. The situation had become a demonstration of how authority, when exercised with composure and clarity, could prevent escalation and command respect. Some onlookers whispered to each other about how they had never seen someone handle a confrontation so effectively, especially against someone in a uniform. Her calm, deliberate approach had turned what could have been a tense and possibly dangerous situation into a lesson in professionalism and courage. The officer, attempting to regain some semblance of control, asked her questions about her presence and her duties. She responded calmly and clearly, providing just enough information to explain her position without overwhelming him with unnecessary details. Her voice remained steady, and she avoided any tone of condescension or confrontation. She understood that the goal was not to belittle the officer, but to establish respect and ensure the situation was resolved safely. The crowd watched closely, noting the balance of authority and diplomacy in her words and actions. The woman's colleagues arrived shortly after, alerted by her earlier messages and aware of the potential for conflict. They approached the scene, and their presence added another layer of authority and support, confirming her story and her position. The officer's body language reflected his increasing awareness of the situation and the need to proceed cautiously. He stepped back further, showing both deference and an understanding that his assumptions had been wrong. The crowd, now slightly dispersed, continued to watch with curiosity and fascination. People whispered among themselves about the remarkable way the woman had handled the confrontation, comparing it to situations they had experienced or witnessed themselves. The officer finally managed to speak more coherently, acknowledging that he had misunderstood the situation and that he should have approached it differently. The woman nodded politely, accepting the acknowledgement without anger, and explained again the importance of professionalism and proper procedure in such encounters. The interaction demonstrated that even in moments of tension and misunderstanding, respectful communication and calm authority could resolve conflict effectively. The onlookers absorbed this lesson, many impressed by the combination of poise, intelligence, and confidence displayed by the woman. As the scene gradually settled, the woman ensured that the officer understood the expectations moving forward. She emphasized that respect and caution were necessary when interacting with individuals in positions. After the officer finally realized the woman's position and the authority she carried, the tension on the sidewalk began to ease, but the situation was far from resolved. She maintained a careful distance, her posture confident yet non-threatening, as she continued to explain her presence and duties. Her voice was steady and clear, carrying a sense of authority that commanded attention without aggression. The officer, now fully aware that his earlier actions were mistaken, listened intently, nodding slightly, trying to process both the embarrassment and the gravity of the situation. The crowd, which had gathered and paused their routines to witness the confrontation, started murmuring among themselves. Some expressed relief, others amazement, noting how calmly she handled the tense moment. A few people approached cautiously, curious about the resolution and wondering how the woman managed to assert herself so effectively. Her colleagues arrived shortly afterward, confirming her account and lending additional credibility to her statements. Their presence reassured both the officer and the crowd, ensuring that the situation could now be wrapped up safely and professionally. She continued speaking to the officer in a firm but polite tone, emphasizing the importance of protocol and respect when interacting with someone in a federal position. She made it clear that assumptions and overzealous actions could have serious consequences. The officer nodded, clearly taking in the information while also showing signs of humility. In acknowledgement that he had let his assumptions guide his behavior too quickly, it was evident to the onlookers that the power dynamic had fully shifted, and the woman now controlled the situation through her composure and clarity. As she spoke, the woman emphasized how critical it was to understand the context before acting. She explained the responsibilities of her role, highlighting that her presence in public spaces was often necessary for investigations and official duties. She did so in a way that was educational rather than confrontational, making the officer aware of her professional obligations without shaming him. Her calm demeanor, combined with her clear explanation, helped de-escalate the situation entirely, turning what could have been a public conflict into a teaching moment. The officer began asking questions, now respectfully, trying to understand how he could have handled the situation differently. She responded with practical guidance, suggesting ways to verify identities, communicate calmly, and avoid misunderstandings in future encounters. Her explanations were simple and straightforward, making it easy for him to comprehend without feeling attacked. The surrounding crowd observed the exchange with renewed interest, impressed by the woman's ability to guide the officer towards self-reflection and learning, rather than confrontation. Throughout the interaction, the woman remained vigilant, aware that public situations could change rapidly. She maintained a safe distance, her movements deliberate and her voice measured. Her colleagues supported her silently, ensuring her safety and providing backup if needed. The officer, now fully aware of the authority she held, softened his tone, showing a willingness to listen and learn. This shift was crucial, as it turned a potentially volatile encounter into a productive and controlled situation. The crowd, witnessing this change, began to disperse slowly, many still recording or whispering to each other about the remarkable handling of the incident. People nearby commented to one another, noting how professional and calm she had remained despite the aggression directed at her. Some reflected on how easy it would have been to panic or escalate the situation, while others admired her confidence and preparation. Her demeanor demonstrated that authority was not just about uniforms or appearances, but about knowledge, poise, and the ability to communicate clearly under pressure. Her actions provided an important lesson for anyone observing the incident. Composure and clarity can prevent misunderstandings from turning into conflicts. The woman then addressed the officer again, reminding him that respect for others' roles and responsibilities was crucial, especially in public interactions. She explained that while law enforcement authority is important, it should be exercised with awareness and understanding. The officer listened carefully, nodding, and began acknowledging the ways his assumptions had influenced his behavior. The interaction was no longer tense. It had become a constructive conversation, with the woman leading through calm authority and clear communication. As the situation settled, the woman's colleagues confirmed her identity and reassured the officer of the legitimacy of her presence. Their arrival also signaled to the crowd that the matter was under control, helping to diffuse any remaining tension. The officer, now fully attentive, asked for clarification on certain aspects of her duties, and she responded without impatience, ensuring that he understood without feeling criticized. The onlookers, having witnessed the entire interaction, began to appreciate the subtle balance of authority, composure, and guidance that had turned the encounter into a controlled and professional resolution. The woman's approach throughout had been meticulous. She had remained aware of her surroundings, maintained a professional distance, and used her voice and posture to assert control without intimidation. Her clear communication helped prevent escalation, and her ability to calmly guide the officer through understanding his error provided a lesson in leadership and authority. The crowd's reaction reflected the impact of her actions, with whispers of admiration and discussions about how someone could handle such a situation so effectively. The street had slowly returned to its usual pace after the confrontation, but the impact of what had just happened lingered in the minds of the people who had witnessed it. The woman had walked away from the sidewalk with quiet confidence, her steps measured and purposeful. Despite the commotion, she had maintained a calm demeanor, handled the situation with professionalism, and asserted her authority in a way that was both firm and non-threatening. Those who had observed the incident discussed it among themselves, some expressing admiration for her composure, others reflecting on how quickly the situation could have escalated without her careful handling. The officer, still standing nearby, was deep in thought. He had realized the gravity of his earlier actions and how assumptions had led to unnecessary aggression. His body language had softened, and there was a sense of humility in the way he stood, acknowledging the lesson he had just received. He reviewed the incident in his mind, thinking about how he could have acted differently, how he could have communicated more effectively, and how awareness and patience could prevent misunderstandings in the future. The woman's example had shown him the importance of respect and careful assessment. and it was clear that the encounter would stay with him for a long time. As she continued down the sidewalk, her colleagues walking alongside her, the woman kept her focus on her work. She moved with purpose, her mind already considering the next steps in her day. Her calm and measured response had not only protected her safety, but had also set a clear example of professionalism in action. The city around her continued its usual rhythm, with people walking, cars moving, and the sounds of daily life filling the air, but her presence carried an unspoken authority that drew subtle attention. Passers-by glanced at her with curiosity and respect, sensing that she had handled something significant without chaos or drama. The incident began to be discussed online and in local circles. Videos captured by witnesses circulated, showing the woman's composed reaction and the officer's change in demeanor. Social media posts praised her courage, her professionalism, and the way she had managed to defuse a tense situation without escalating it. People admired how she had asserted her authority calmly, teaching an unintentional but important lesson about respect, preparation, and professionalism. The story spread, resonating with viewers who appreciated real-life examples of how composure and intelligence could prevent conflict. Back on the street, the officer reflected on the feedback from his colleagues and the public. The realization of how quickly misunderstandings could occur and how easily situations could escalate if not handled with awareness and patience weighed on him. He considered the training he had received and thought about how he could apply it better in the future. The encounter with the woman had highlighted the importance of clear communication, respect, and understanding, and he felt the need to internalize these lessons to improve his conduct. Meanwhile, the woman returned to her professional routine. She focused on her responsibilities, attending meetings, making calls, and conducting her official duties with the same efficiency and attention to detail as always. Her calm handling of the sidewalk confrontation had added an unspoken layer of confidence to her demeanor, reinforcing her ability to manage high-pressure situations. Her colleagues noted the smooth resolution and the skill she had displayed, recognizing that she had turned a potentially dangerous encounter into a controlled and educational experience. As the day went on, the incident began to serve as a point of reflection for many in the community. People discussed how professional conduct, clear communication, and calm authority could make a significant difference in tense situations. The woman's actions highlighted that confidence, preparation, and awareness were key to managing unexpected challenges. Her example became a reminder that how one responds under pressure can influence outcomes, change perceptions, and even teach valuable lessons to others. The officer, now more mindful of his approach, began making subtle changes in his interactions with the public. He focused on being observant, asking questions before making assumptions, and listening carefully. The encounter with the woman served as a turning point, shaping his behavior and perspective. He realized that authority should be exercised with caution, patience, and respect, and that misjudgments could lead to unnecessary conflict or embarrassment. The incident had become a personal lesson, one he would carry into future interactions. The woman's story continued to resonate throughout the day and beyond. Colleagues, friends, and members of the public shared accounts of her calm and professional handling of a tense moment. People admired her ability to assert authority without aggression, to educate rather than chastise, and to maintain composure under pressure. Her approach provided a model for effective conflict resolution, demonstrating that understanding, preparation, and clear communication could prevent escalation and ensure positive outcomes. Even as the city moved on with its routine, the lessons of the morning lingered. The encounter had shown that true authority comes not from force or assumption, but from knowledge, calmness, and confidence. The woman's actions had left a lasting impression, showing that professionalism and composure could diffuse tension and command respect. Those who had witnessed the interaction remembered her poise, her careful approach, and the way she had guided the situation toward resolution without hostility. Later, as she reflected on the morning's events, the woman recognized the importance of remaining vigilant, prepared, and composed in public interactions. She understood that unpredictability is part of the job, and that handling it effectively requires confidence, awareness, and a clear understanding of one's responsibilities. Her calm demeanor had not only ensured her safety, but had also provided a valuable example for the officer and the crowd that had witnessed the event. She carried forward the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she had turned a tense moment into a demonstration of professionalism and authority. The officer, influenced by the encounter, began sharing his experience with colleagues, emphasizing the importance of patience, observation, and respectful engagement. The incident had reshaped his approach, highlighting how quickly assumptions could lead to unnecessary conflict and how composure and understanding could prevent it. He reflected on the lesson learned and sought to integrate it into his daily interactions, becoming more mindful of his behavior and the potential consequences of his actions. For the witnesses and the wider community, the story became more than just a single event on a busy city sidewalk. It was a powerful example of how individuals could assert authority and handle high-pressure situations with professionalism and calm. The woman's actions demonstrated that knowledge, preparation, and confidence are essential in maintaining control and preventing escalation. Her example resonated with people, serving as a reminder that in tense moments, calm, clarity, and measured responses can make all the difference. By the end of the day, the sidewalk where the confrontation had occurred returned to its usual rhythm, but the memory of the event lingered. People who had witnessed it shared their impressions, recalling how the woman had remained composed, assertive, and professional despite the aggression directed at her. The officer, reflecting on his behavior and the lesson he had learned, walked away with a renewed understanding of patience, respect, and the importance of careful judgment. The city continued, but the impact of the encounter left a lasting impression on everyone involved. The woman, moving through her day with focus and confidence, exemplified the power of professionalism in the face of unexpected challenges. Her calm handling of the situation had prevented escalation, maintained safety, and provided a model of authority and poise. Those who observed her actions, including the officer and the crowd, were reminded of the importance of respect, preparation, and clear communication. The incident became a story of courage, composure, and professionalism, leaving an enduring message that would be remembered long after the city returned to its routine. In the end, the woman's actions highlighted a simple but profound truth: how one responds in moments of tension can change the outcome, influence others, and demonstrate true authority. Her quiet confidence, careful planning, and calm demeanor had turned a potentially dangerous situation into a moment of learning, reflection, and respect. The officer had learned a lesson he would carry with him. The witnesses had observed an example of professionalism under pressure, and the woman had continued her day with the satisfaction of knowing she had handled the situation with skill, courage, and composure. The story of that morning would remain a testament to the power of calm, confident, and professional action in real-life encounters. Even as the officer slowly began to step away, acknowledging the lesson he had received, the woman maintained her composure, ensuring that the interaction concluded safely and professionally. She moved deliberately, showing that she remained in control and that her actions had been carefully thought out. The city around them continued its daily rhythm, but the memory of the confrontation lingered, leaving a lasting impression on the witnesses and the officer alike. The woman's calm handling of the situation demonstrated a crucial point. Professionalism and preparation can diffuse tension, assert authority, and prevent conflict. She had managed not only to protect herself, but also to educate and guide the officer toward better understanding and behavior. Her actions provided an example of how to navigate potentially volatile situations with intelligence, poise, and clarity, leaving everyone involved with a sense of respect and understanding. The crowd gradually dispersed, carrying with them the story of what had occurred on that busy sidewalk. Many would share their observations later, emphasizing the courage and professionalism displayed. The officer, reflecting on the incident, seemed genuinely introspective, recognizing the importance of measured actions and the potential consequences of assumptions. The woman, having ensured that the encounter was resolved safely, returned to her work with the same quiet confidence that had defined her approach from the beginning. The day continued around them, but the lessons of that morning remained. The woman's ability to assert her authority without aggression, guide the officer toward self-awareness, and manage the situation professionally had turned what could have been a public conflict into a powerful example of composure, clarity, and respect. Those who had witnessed the event were reminded that in moments of tension, maintaining calm and professionalism could transform potential conflict into an opportunity for learning and understanding. Even after the crowd had dispersed and the officer moved on, the impact of the woman's actions was evident. She had demonstrated that authority is not merely about appearances or uniforms, but about knowledge, preparation, and the ability to communicate effectively under pressure. Her handling of the situation provided a memorable lesson in professionalism, courage, and the importance of staying composed in the face of aggression. The city moved on, but the story of that morning, and the way she managed it with confidence and clarity, would remain a lasting example for all who had witnessed it. A federal authority, especially in public settings. The officer listened, nodding, clearly taking in the guidance and reflecting on his earlier actions. The crowd began to disperse more fully, some still recording, some discussing the incident with each other, but all recognizing the remarkable handling of what could have become a serious confrontation. The woman's presence and approach had not only protected her own safety, but also demonstrated a model of professionalism and composure for everyone watching. The street slowly returned to its usual rhythm, with people walking by, cars moving through intersections, and city life continuing as if nothing had happened. Yet, for those who had witnessed the interaction, the memory of the confrontation and the woman's poise lingered. They discussed how someone could remain calm and assertive even when faced with aggression, and how knowledge, preparation, and composure could prevent misunderstandings from escalating. The officer, now more cautious and aware of his actions, moved on with a more thoughtful approach, having learned a lesson about assumptions, authority, and professional conduct. The woman, having successfully navigated the confrontation, returned to her work, her steps measured and confident. She maintained her calm demeanor, showing that even in unexpected situations, professionalism and poise were essential. Her actions had conveyed authority, protected her safety, and ensured that the interaction ended without escalation or conflict. People continued to discuss the incident, noting how unusual it was to see such control and assertiveness displayed in a tense public encounter. Some remarked on how it might serve as a reminder to others about the importance of respect, awareness, and proper conduct. The encounter became a point of reflection for the crowd and the officer alike. It demonstrated the power of calm authority and strategic action in diffusing a tense situation. The woman's ability to assert her position without aggression or panic left a lasting impression on those who had watched. The city, with its noise and energy, continued around her, but she carried with her the quiet confidence of someone who had successfully managed a potentially dangerous encounter with intelligence, courage, and professionalism. Even as she moved away from the sidewalk, the lessons of the interaction remained. The officer, reflecting on the incident, realized the importance of not jumping to conclusions and the need for patience, understanding, and proper assessment in public interactions. The woman had demonstrated that authority was not just about uniforms or appearances, but about knowledge, preparation, composure, and the ability to communicate clearly and effectively under pressure. The witnesses to the scene carried these impressions with them, recognizing the extraordinary skill it took to handle such a situation, calmly and assertively. The story of that morning would linger in the minds of those present, not just as an unusual event, but as a testament to professionalism and poise in real-life conflict. The woman had shown that even in moments of unexpected confrontation, it was possible to maintain control, assert authority, and prevent escalation through calmness, clarity, and intelligence. The officer's change in demeanor, the reactions of the crowd, and the overall resolution highlighted the profound impact of composure and professional conduct in the face of tension. It was a moment that, for everyone involved, would not soon be forgotten. And reflections. The woman's calm, deliberate actions had turned what could have been a physical altercation into a moment of authority, awareness, and professionalism. The incident illustrated the power of composure and clear communication. The woman's ability to remain calm, assert authority, and use her official identification effectively prevented a situation that could have escalated into conflict. Her measured responses, careful movements, and professional demeanor became a lesson for the officer and a remarkable example for the crowd watching. People would later recount the scene, impressed by how someone could handle such a tense encounter without resorting to anger or force. As the woman prepared to continue with her work, she kept her presence calm and authoritative. The officer, still processing the situation, remained on the sidewalk, now respectful and cautious. The crowd slowly moved along, some continuing to record or whisper about the incident, others simply reflecting on the unusual events they had witnessed. The woman's professionalism and ability to maintain control had created a clear impression, not only on the officer but also on the bystanders who had watched everything unfold. It was a reminder that in moments of tension, calm, clarity, and authority could change the outcome dramatically. Even as the city returned to its normal rhythm, the memory of the confrontation lingered. People talked about how quickly the situation had escalated and how equally quickly it had been defused. The woman's steady presence and strategic use of her identification had prevented a conflict, protected her own safety, and taught a lesson in respect and professionalism. The scene had become more than just a chance encounter. It had turned into a demonstration of courage, composure, and the power of quiet authority in a world that often reacted too quickly and assumed too much. The officer, now aware of his error, stood quietly for a moment, reflecting on how his assumptions had almost led to a regrettable outcome. The woman, meanwhile, had ensured that the situation was handled without anger, confrontation, or unnecessary escalation. Her ability to manage the incident calmly and professionally left an impression on everyone present. The city's noise, which had seemed distant during the confrontation, now returned fully, but the lesson from the encounter lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. The woman moved on with her work, leaving the sidewalk with the same quiet confidence that had marked her arrival, proving that control, composure, and professionalism could turn a tense moment into an example of courage and authority. Artful and deliberate, she needed to assert herself without provoking further aggression. The city continued around them, with people walking by, cars moving slowly in traffic, and the sounds of construction echoing in the distance. But for those standing close to the confrontation, the world seemed to narrow down to just the woman and the officer. Her heart beat steadily, not from panic but from focus as she assessed her options. She realized that the situation could turn dangerous very quickly if she didn't handle it correctly. She also knew that her training and position would help her manage it, if she could just get the officer to understand who she was. As the officer prepared for another move, she reached slowly into her bag, her hand steady. The crowd watched, some sensing that she might reveal something important. Her movements were careful and deliberate, designed to show no threat while also preparing to protect herself and assert authority. The officer, distracted by his own assumptions, didn't notice the significance of what she was doing. The tension remained high, and the crowd around them held their collective breath, unsure of what would happen next. She retrieved something from her bag and held it up slowly, making sure the officer could see it. The city's usual noise felt distant in that moment, replaced by the electric tension of a confrontation about to be resolved. The onlookers whispered and pointed, their curiosity mixed with concern. She didn't shout or make sudden movements, but the authority in her posture and expression was unmistakable. The officer's aggression remained, but there was a hint of hesitation now, as if he sensed that this situation might not be what it appeared to him. She spoke calmly, identifying herself and making it clear that she held a position of authority. The officer froze, his hands dropping slightly, confusion and surprise crossing his face. The crowd murmured in shock and curiosity, realizing that this wasn't an ordinary confrontation. People who had been quietly recording the scene stopped for a moment, watching the dynamic shift between the two adults on the busy sidewalk. This moment marked a turning point, but the tension still lingered. The officer was trying to comprehend the new information, while the woman remained steady, confident, and professional. She had managed to hold her ground, maintain her composure, and communicate authority without raising her voice or escalating the situation. The people nearby began to relax slightly, sensing that the confrontation might soon be resolved, though the air still held a charged energy. The woman's calm and measured actions set the stage for the next steps, showing the power of confidence, preparation, and quiet authority in the face of misunderstanding and aggression. Even as the city continued its rush around them, the moment between the woman and the officer felt suspended in time. The crowd's attention was fixed on the exchange, some recording, others simply watching with wide eyes. The woman's presence, calmness, and clear authority created a stark contrast with the officer's initial aggression, making the scene unforgettable for everyone witnessing it. The stage was set for what would happen next, and the woman was ready to handle it with professionalism, courage, and clarity, proving that composure and confidence could turn a dangerous situation around, even in the middle of a bustling city street.